Nice to meet you again after some break. So today's topic is actually Bodhichitta. So we are studying chapter number 5, which is chapter on cultivation of Bodhichitta. Many of you may have a clear idea of what Bodhichitta means. Bodhichitta basically means the mind to enlightenment. That is the literal meaning. But the kind of definition is that bodhicitta is a mind wishing to achieve Buddhahood for the benefit of all sentient beings. So it has two aspirations. One aspiration is to become Buddha, then another aspiration is to cultivate, to benefit all sentient beings. Okay. Now, this bodhicitta is basically of two types, aspirational bodhicitta and engaging bodhicitta. Aspirational bodhicitta basically means bodhicitta only at the level of aspiration. That means how nice if I become Buddha for the benefit of all sentient beings. And you may not actually practice what you aspire, but you simply aspire to become a Buddha for the benefit of all sentient beings, which is like the wish to go somewhere, but not actually going. So that wish to go somewhere is also very important, without which you will never move. But having that wish alone is not enough. You actually need to go. So therefore, aspirational bodhicitta is really very important, but only on the level of aspiration. So in our ordinary case, we may not be able to practice the 6 perfections and other bodhisattva activities, but to start with, it is important to aspire to cultivate that bodhicitta. Now, bodhicitta, simply said, is the best of all the minds. Best of all the mind means there are many minds, just loving kindness, compassion, wish to benefit others. There's so many different types of mind wishing to benefit others. But this mind is supreme in the sense that the mind is saying, may I become Buddha to benefit all sentient beings. With the realization that the only way to perfectly benefit all sentient beings is that you yourself become a Buddha. Once you become Buddha, then you are able to foresee the state of the mind of sentient beings at this time, what has been their state of mind in the past, and what will be their state of mind in the future, things like that. So you are able to see all the 3 times. So therefore, you are able to read the mind of other people. So based on your mental disposition, interest, you will be able to show the path that is relevant to that person. So therefore, this wish to become Buddha is the best mind that you can ever think about. And other important minds, loving kindness, compassion, they are kind of prerequisites or precursor to the cultivation of bodhicitta. So now in order to cultivate this aspirational bodhicitta, you need to first of all have a clear understanding of the benefits of such an aspiration. Okay, the wish to benefit your neighbor or the wish to benefit even your community, even that is counted as a very important thing. Now here you have a mind which is aspiring to benefit all sentient beings. May I become Buddha for the benefit of all sentient beings. Imagine, it's not even talking about benefiting human beings alone. It's talking about benefiting all sentient beings. Imagine all sentient beings, which includes the tiniest, helpless insects. All sentient beings basically means all those beings that has a mind, that has a consciousness. Okay, so there may be visible, there may be invisible, because all sentient beings wish to have happiness and wish to shun suffering, but they are without happiness and full of suffering. So therefore, your wish is to help all of them. Okay, so that is such an expensive mind. Okay, so it's important. We can't even think about such a mind. So it's important for us at least to pray to gradually move towards cultivation of such a bodhicitta. So therefore, first of all, it's really important to see the qualities of cultivation of such a mind. So therefore, we in the Tibetan system of practice, we are supposed to, if you claim to be Buddhist, you are supposed to take refuge and cultivate bodhicitta 3 times a day or 3 times a night, things like that. Okay, so it's important to remember that again and again. Okay. And with that kind of recollection of the qualities of the cultivation of bodhicitta, then practically also you need to cultivate this mind repeatedly, so that gradually the mind becomes very familiar to you. And hopefully one day you will be able to cultivate the actual bodhicitta. Now, cultivation of actual bodhicitta is not that easy, because through repeated practice, when you get very close to that mind, and that mind, comes automatically without having to make any effort, then that means you have succeeded in cultivation of that bodhicitta, which is not that easy. And then also, just as if you are to invite a very important person, you need to make necessary preparations. Okay, prepare nice accommodation, prepare nice lunch, dinner, prepare nice vehicle to transport that person here and there, things like that. So this invitation, the wish to cultivate bodhicitta, is really like inviting an emperor or a great king or something like that. So in order to do that, because bodhicitta is such a precious mind, you need to have enough store of merit. Okay, we may or may not be able to understand what does that mean, but it basically means that your mind should have that capacity, that strength, that to be able to receive and cultivate such a bodhicitta. So therefore, you need to cultivate the two, you know, uh, two collections, which is collection of merit and collection of wisdom. Okay, and then another very important thing is that uh, having aspired to cultivate such a bodhicitta, then you should not give up the well-being of sentient beings. You should never, say that I'm not going to work for this person. Okay, which is very likely for us to happen, especially to those animals. So those enemies who harass you, who torture you, or those who bent on doing many destructive things, we will think that this person, I can't develop compassion and love. Okay, so that should not be there. Even those sentient beings who are doing the most horrible thing, they are doing that totally out of ignorance. They might be thinking that they are doing for the greater goodness of the community or the society or the nation and things like that, but basically it is done with ignorance. Okay, and when you venture out, try to do something out of ignorance, you will never find the right solution. Very soon it will be like digging your own grave. Okay, so therefore the important point is you should never forget the well-being of other sentient beings. And then you should also train yourself in removing the 4 negative deeds and cultivation of the 4 positive deeds. And the 4 negative deeds that you should shun are, having aspired to cultivate bodhicitta, you should not deceive the abbot from whom you have received teachings, or your preceptor or acharya from whom you have received teachings, or your lama or your benefactor, those people who are very close to you in terms of their spiritual relationship or material relationship. You should not cheat them, you should not deceive them. So that there is one negative deed that you must avoid. Then the next thing is that there may be people who are doing wonderful things, amazing things. When you see such people, even if you are unable to encourage them and appreciate them, you should not say and do things which would dampen their spirit of continuously doing such good things. If somebody has done something which is not, uh, you know, uh, an object of regret, but if you tell them that this is, useless, and thereby encourage that person to develop regret. For example, if you are attending a special precious teaching on bodhicitta, somebody says, why you are wasting your time, this has no relevance in your life, things like that, and because of that you also think that, okay, I wasted my life and develop regret, then that is one negative deed which you should not do. And similarly, if you see people who have entered the path of the Mahayana teaching, and then you should praise such people. Okay, but instead of praising such people, if you despise them and say negative things about them, then there is one negative deed. Similarly, you should not use unpleasant words towards them, and unworthy, statements regarding them. Okay, And then the next thing is, when you deal with other people, you should deal with other people sincerely and honestly, not with deceitfulness and cunningfulness. So instead of having a clear sense of responsibility, if you relate to others out of deceitfulness and cunningness, then that is one negative deed, which is a hindrance to cultivation of bodhicitta. So you should give up that also. So these are the 4 negative deeds that you should avoid. Then in terms of the 4 virtuous, practices that you should adopt is that having aspire to cultivate bodhicitta, you should not tell lie. Okay, even when you make a joke. Okay, not only not telling major lies, but even by making jokes, you should not tell lie. And you should live with other people with genuine sense of responsibility, without cunningness and deceitfulness. And you should develop this motivation of seeing all bodhisattvas as actual teacher, actual Buddhas. And you should sing their praises in all directions. Like, for example, highly praising His Holiness the Dalai Lama or other great teachers all around. That is really good. So that is how we can make these precious teachers known to many people. And that provides that opportunity for many others to come to this person and receive teaching and get good guidance. So that should be there. And then when you meet people who may want to follow a short path and who may not aspire to cultivate bodhicitta and engage in the Mahayana practice, there, in that case also you should, by different means, try to measure their mind and show them the right path to the Mahayana path, which leads to complete enlightenment. Okay, so now out of these practices, the most important thing is that not to give up the purpose of sentient beings. Okay, because if you do that, then you basically lose your precept of taking bodhicitta. Now, in the case of the engaging in the bodhisattva, out of the 2, the aspirational bodhicitta and engaging bodhicitta, in the case of training in the engaging bodhicitta, there are things that you should give up, and there are things that you should adopt or practice. Okay. Now, for example, things that you should adopt are as explained in the compendium of precepts, where it says that things that you should give up. For example, you should not rob or steal those things that are offered to the triple gems with the Dharma and Sangha, and also giving up the sublime Dharma teaching. That is one negative deed, one fault. And then even in the case of a morally corrupted monk or nun, because of their moral corruption, if you rob their saffron cloth, or if you beat them or imprison them or defraud them, that is also a wrong deed, negative deed. And similarly, engaging in 5 heinous crimes or actions and holding wrong view. So these are something that you should avoid. So like that, there are many like good infractions, other things that you should gradually learn. Okay, so these are some of the major faults. And then with regard to the minor faults, we should not engage in doing those things which is against the 3 moral precepts, the moral precepts of collecting virtuous qualities, the moral precepts of working for the benefit of sentient beings, and the moral precept of restraining the negative deeds. Okay. Oh yeah. So in short, you should, once you cultivate that bodhicitta, so basically I'm talking about two things. One is cultivate bodhicitta at aspirational level. And then with repeated practice, when you are sure that you will be able to now practice the precepts, then you should take the bodhisattva vow. Now, unlike other pratimoksha vows, you can take bodhisattva vow. The best is, of course, if you take bodhisattva vow from qualified teachers. And if you don't find such qualified teachers, you can take bodhisattva vow in front of a holy image of the Buddha or stupa also. It's also possible. So kind of liberal thinking. Okay, there's the thing. Yeah. And as is said in the Shantideva's Bodhisattva way of life, that the moment you, I mean, this is talking about the preciousness of bodhicitta. And Shantideva says, the moment you cultivate bodhicitta, even those sentient beings, poor sentient beings who may be imprisoned in the cycle of existence, then instantaneously they will be liberated by developing that bodhicitta. Okay, so it's like elixir that transforms ordinary irons or other metals into gold or other precious substances. It's really, really important. So what we should understand from this is, we talk about so many different types of Buddhist practices, okay? So many. But the root is having a mind that is wishing to benefit others and wishing not to harm anybody. As simple as that. Okay, if you do this one practice, then you have really understood the essence of Buddha's teaching. Now, if you don't do that, then there is really not fun receiving many vows, Patimoksha vow, Bodhisattva vow, Tantric vow, you may be able to count all the precepts and things like that. But then the very foundation is lost. The very foundation is lost. So that is something that we should always keep in our mind. It's not easy. It's not easy because we meet strange people, different people. Then the world is turmoil, and nowadays, especially nowadays, there's a war going on everywhere. It's not happening, in Ukraine and Russia. Now it's about to happen in Taiwan and China. In many places, unfortunate things are happening. So what should we do with these practices during such occasions? Okay, so here you need to understand, one thing that you should understand very clearly is, anybody who is born has to die. There's no escape from that.
Geshe, I'm sorry, I think that we lost Julia.
So therefore, when we talk about the purpose of human life, we need to see things in a larger perspective, larger context. It is not the few wars and killings going here and there. You think about the whole universe, or you at least think about the whole human society. That killing and bad deeds are not happening in each and every town, each and every family, everywhere. You see from a larger perspective. That's number one. Number two, in whatever name it may come, one day we all have to die. Okay, that does not mean that your life is meaningless. So therefore, it is important that whatever be the situation, however difficult it is, we need to think that the only and the best way to make human life meaningful is not to harm others, and as much as possible to help others in all situations, especially in difficult situations. So you will always get an opportunity to help somebody here and there. So when you start doing this, then you will get a sense of what life means. You will get a sense of the meaning of being a human. Okay. The killings and other unfortunate things that is happening is the indication of the animal in us. Okay. So the demarcation by which we should make ourselves human beings is, we should transcend that, that animal nature in us, and use our brain, use our great thinking capacity and transform it into a positive direction through developing loving kindness, compassion, and so forth. So through that way, you will really be able to, it's really like eating a delicious meal. And when you actually implement it, you will really feel that whatever is happening in the rest of the world, but I'm making my life meaningful. That's it. You can't control the whole world, okay? You can't control the whole world, but you can control yourself in whatever situation it is. You are the most important world in that perspective. So therefore, in all difficult situations, in all ups and downs in life, you should never lose, hope for the good. Okay. So that I think is very important. So one of the most important source for that thing is to aspire for the benefit of all sentient beings, whether you call it bodhicitta or not, but to aspire for the benefit of all sentient beings. Okay. So in short, there is a quotation in the 20 verses on Bodhisattva vow, where it says, whether it is others or it is oneself, even if it's a little bit troublesome right now, but so long as it is beneficial for oneself and others, do it. Okay. Now, even if it is a little bit enjoying, a little bit comfortable right now, but in the long run, it is bringing suffering and problem upon oneself and others, then don't do that. So that is almost like the summary of the Bodhisattva vow. Okay. Any? Now let us explain a little bit about the text itself.
Geshe, I'm sorry, I just would like to mention for them that the numbers of the verses do not coincide. In Geshe La's text, it begins with the number 1 at every chapter. And in our version, it is just continuing from the very beginning. So we'll begin with the number 47 in our book. Okay. Thank you. Sorry for that.
So you can say 47, 48, and so forth, right? So, so we are reading chapter 5, which is on cultivation of bodhicitta. And the first verse says, great enthusiasm, great effort, great purpose, and great result. That is the mental engagement of bodhisattva, a mind that comes with the possession of 2 minds. So that means the number 1, the verse number 1 says, first of all, it talks about great enthusiasm. Now, great enthusiasm means one very important quality of cultivation of this bodhisattva vow is, or bodhicitta is, that with armor-like effort, when you meditate on the profound shunyata, and similarly, when you work hard for other sentient beings, you will not lose your enthusiasm. There will be great enthusiasm. Okay. So that is how the cultivation of bodhicitta transforms the person. Okay. This is very important. As we repeatedly mentioned earlier, making effort in Buddhist practice does not mean simply working harder. It basically means delighting in the good things that you do. That's very, very important. Like people playing football or playing a musical instrument. You have a lot of joy. And you can see that in your facial expression, in your hand gesture, and so forth. You're fully, physically, verbally, mentally, you're involved in it. Okay. So likewise, when we engage in, spiritual practice, virtuous practice, especially in terms of cultivation of bodhicitta, there should be total engagement, physically, verbally, mentally. So that's the meaning. Great enthusiasm, like a cheerer of a football match. Great enthusiasm. So that means the job you are doing is not that easy. You're meditating on the profound emptiness. Okay. And then you are also working for the benefit of all sentient beings. That's not easy. But because you have a clear sight of the goal, that these are the ways and means to benefit countless sentient beings, then there will be a lot of joy in that. This is different from having temporary pleasure. When you engage in some destructive negative deeds, there is a lot of temporary pleasure or excitement, but there's no real long-lasting joy. Okay. So therefore, even if you make a comparison between your experience of physical pleasure and mental delight, you will see there will be a lot of difference. Like tasting a very delicious food, that's physical experience. So while the food is in the mouth and your tongue is tasting it, it may be delicious, but how long it will last? It will not last very long. Okay. After the food is finished, you will only say it was delicious. Okay. You can't taste it anymore. But if it is something that you cultivate with your mind, then it's much more long lasting, much more long lasting. And especially when you meditate on shunyata or emptiness, the profound emptiness, then it is like freeing yourself. It's like flying in the space. Why people enjoy flying in the space? Why people fond of gliding in the space? Because you find yourself that you're high, you're uplifted, and there's no restriction. You can move in all directions, right? So like that, once you understand the meaning of shunyata, then unlike you're focusing on a television camera or a car, however important they're solid objects, and your mind kind of get entrapped into that. You get restricted into that. But unlike that, when you really think about the profound meaning of emptiness, it has a very liberating effect. So that's why the enthusiasm will automatically come. And then similarly, when you work for other people, normally when you have some kind of reluctance to work for the benefit of other beings, then even if you push yourself hard, you will immediately get tired. That's why we talk about compassion fatigue or emotional fatigue, things like that. As I mentioned earlier also, you experience this, compassion or emotional fatigue. There may be other reasons, but one main reason is you don't genuinely have love to those people to whom you are helping. Okay? For example, if you are helping your sweetheart, girlfriend or boyfriend, you will not get tired easily. He may be sick, but the fact that you are able to sit near him or her and help her, it's not tiring. You may have to do the same, running up, running down, meeting all the doctors, things like that. But still, because you are doing this for your love, don't get tired. Similarly, mother doing all these things for her small children, she doesn't get tired. She would be voluntarily and happily do it, and she will, as you always see, the mothers keep a watch on their children day and night, not easily getting tired or not suffering from emotional fatigue or compassion fatigue. But in our ordinary stance, when we do something for others, we immediately get tired because there is no genuine sense of responsibility, no genuine liking, no genuine appreciation that this is a kind of golden opportunity for me to collect merit. That kind of understanding is not there. Okay. So that is why this statement, great enthusiasm in meditating on the profound meaning of emptiness, and also undertaking hardship to benefit others and beings, is a very important comment. Okay. Then the second, great effort. Great effort means when you actually strive to accumulate the two merits, the wisdom and compassion and so forth, then you make great effort. There will be the starting point itself will be great. You go into it with full force. So that way you're able to collect the two merits. So that means that is the meaning of great effort. Now, in terms of the quality of fulfilling one's purposes, the word say great purpose. Great purpose means it is by developing and cultivating such a bodhicitta that you will be able to fulfill your purposes or fulfill the purposes of all sentient beings. Okay? And then great result. Now, it's not like ordinary work. Many of the ordinary works that we do, we work very hard and perspire, but at the end, we really have not much to show, except a handful of money or things like that. There's nothing much to show, to be so happy about. Whereas in the case of cultivation of bodhicitta, then this will lead to fruit, a consequence, which is none other than the great enlightenment. Okay? And what other kind of greater fruit is there than achieving that complete enlightenment? So there's the meaning, great effort. So in short, that is the mental engagement of bodhicitta, a mind that comes with the possession of two minds. So that is what I've already explained. So that is basically the definition of bodhicitta, how it engages in, and it has this two mind. Two mind means the aspirational bodhicitta and the engaging bodhicitta. Okay. Next, verse 2. This bodhicitta in terms of spiritual grounds are belief, special attitude, maturation, which is another, likewise one that has removed obscurations. So now this second verse is talking about kind of demarcations. Okay. Now in terms of the spiritual ground, in terms of the achievement of the bodhicitta in different spiritual ground, it is of four types. The bodhicitta in terms of spiritual grounds, in different, this when you have cultivated bodhicitta, then you move from one spiritual ground to another spiritual ground. So in that case, this is classified into four types. Now the bodhicitta that a person has cultivated below the supreme dharma, that means the second path of application, okay, Jolam, path of application. So that path of application is also of four types. The last stage is called the supreme dharma, supreme quality. So the bodhicitta that you have cultivated below that level, that is called bodhicitta on the level of aspiration. That means below that level, you have this conception of sameness of oneself and others, but you have not realized emptiness directly. And you simply, almost like, in terms of visualization or imagination, you have understanding of bodhicitta. So that's the meaning of belief. Belief means basically in terms of one's own aspiration, that you have some understanding of bodhicitta through a generic image. You have not understood or realized emptiness directly. So therefore, their level is called level of belief or level of aspiration. Now, from the first spiritual ground, the first spiritual ground is actualized when you actualize or see emptiness directly. So from the level of the first spiritual ground until to the seventh spiritual ground, then you actually realize the sameness of oneself and others. And therefore, that state is called pure universal sense of responsibility. Okay. So therefore, this is called the pure, the special attitude or pure sense of responsibility. Okay. Then during the last three pure spiritual ground, just before the achievement of enlightenment, those last three spiritual grounds are grounds where you have developed the non-conceptual primordial wisdom, without having to make any effort, and thereby you have this full maturation of cultivation of bodhicitta. And this is a different kind of bodhicitta than the previous one. So therefore, this is called maturation, which is another. Means which is different from the first two, where there is a different kind of maturation of mind and thereby cultivation of bodhicitta. And then finally, when you become Buddha, then you've reached a state where you've removed both the two obscurations, the obscuration of afflictive emotions and the cognitive obscurations. So that state of bodhicitta is called bodhicitta, where you have removed all the obscurations. Now, normally a question is raised here by saying that this is not on the level of a bodhisattva, but a level of a completely enlightened Buddha. Okay, some people might argue things like that, but you don't have to make such a clear-cut distinction, because you can simply give a name. Okay, this is almost like given the name. This is the bodhicitta of a bodhisattva, but this is just a designation. Okay, it doesn't have to be the bodhicitta of a bodhisattva in the sense of an unenlightened being, but this is bodhicitta of enlightened being, the Buddha. Okay. Likewise, one that has removed obscuration. So these are the four. Okay. Now the next verse, its root is affirmed as compassion, always thinking about benefiting sentient beings, believe in Dharma and likewise holding it, and focusing on seeking primordial wisdom. Aspiration to move higher is the basis of extensive vows. Okay, so that means in terms of establishing the nature of the bodhicitta, now these four types of bodhicitta that we already explained, discussed, in the case of all these four different types of bodhicitta, the root is affirmed as compassion. Affirmed means it is definite that they all have to arise from compassion, the wish to remove sufferings of all sentient beings. Now, at that level, what is the mental attitude? The mental attitude is always thinking about benefiting sentient beings. Always. That's the mental attitude. Again, just like a mother to her beloved child. Day and night, she thinks only about the well-being of her child. So similarly, a bodhisattva always, day and night, thinks about how to benefit other sentient beings. Believe in Dharma. Believe in Dharma here means such a bodhisattva who cultivates such a bodhicitta, they believe in the Mahayana Dharma. Not any Dharma here, but it talks about belief in the Mahayana Dharma. Believe in Dharma and likewise holding it. That means once you see the great many qualities of such a bodhicitta or the path of Mahayana, then just as you have ascertained, you will hold it. You will cultivate and you will hold it. So that's the meaning. Likewise, holding it and focusing on seeking primordial wisdom. So that talks about the objects or the object of focus. So likewise, in terms of the object of focus, the ultimate object of focus is to seek the primordial wisdom. Okay, that's the meaning. And focusing on seeking primordial wisdom. Aspiration to move higher Aspiration to move higher means one is not contented with the actualization of one level of spiritual path or spiritual ground, but one has this aspiration to move higher and higher. That means to abandon all those things that must be abandoned and to realize all those things that must be realized. Okay? Aspiration to move higher is the basis of extensive vows. And such an aspiration, such an approach is the basis, the foundation of the extensive Bodhisattva vows. Next verse number 4. Obstructing the path is discordant site. It will first activate and then adopt, increasing the virtue that is in the nature of merit and wisdom. And that's the nature of merit and wisdom, is it is benefit. So that means, now if you ask a question, what are, okay, if these are the qualities of cultivation of Bodhichitta and so forth, then what are the obstructive factors? The obstructive factor is obstructing the path is discordant side. Discordant side means those sides which is not in harmony with the Mahayana aspiration, the cultivation of Bodhichitta. So that means if you aspire to achieve liberation just for yourself, just like the Sarvakas and the Pratyeka Buddhas do, if you do that, then that is the obstructive factor here. Okay, it will activate. It will activate and then adopt. It will activate and then adopt means that is the obstructing part. The discordant side or the obstructive path is that if you first activate means if you first cultivate the almost like selfish mind of Sarvakas and Pratyeka Buddhas, okay, you activate it, you cultivate it, and having cultivated it, you don't see it as a limitation, and you continue to hold it, you continue to adopt it. So that is the obstructive factor for cultivation of the path of the Mahayana. Increasing the virtue that is in the nature of merit and wisdom is it is benefit. So there is an obstructive part and also a favorable part. We have already discussed about the obstructing side, but what is the favorable part? The favorable part is that if you adopt the means of accumulating merit and cultivation of wisdom, then naturally all your virtues will prosper and increase. So that is the benefit of cultivation of such a mind and appreciation of such a mind. Verse number 5. Constantly adjoining wisdom perfection is affirmed as renunciation. This is the ultimate ground, as this text to it is individual ground, and hence the generation of mind of Bodhisattva should be understood as being established. So that means if you constantly adjoining the wisdom perfection, that means if you constantly stay in touch with the cultivation of the 6 perfections, okay, then that means you are really emerging out of those objects of elimination. You are practicing your renunciation, okay? This is the ultimate ground. Now, this is the ultimate ground means that in terms of the ultimate qualities of all these 4 types of bodhicitta that we already discussed, this will lead to actualization of the supreme dharma, the 7th spiritual ground, the 10th spiritual ground, and the state of enlightenment, as we already briefly explained. Because in the case of the first three types of bodhicitta, it will lead to the ultimate quality of its own individual level. And then finally, when you remove all the obscurations, then of course you really actualize that ultimate state of enlightenment. So that is the meaning. It's affirmed as a renunciation. This is the ultimate ground, as this takes to its individual ground, number one, in the case of the first three levels of bodhicitta, and hence the generation of mind of bodhisattva should be understood as being established. Okay, this is established means that this is lead to such definite objects. Okay, verse number 6. Those which arose from the power of friends, power of cause, power of root, power of listening and habituation in the virtue, unstable and stable arises, are called as bodhicittas shown by others. Now, having explained the different types of bodhicitta, if you ask what are the ways and means you can cultivate it. In terms of ways and means of cultivation of this bodhicitta, one way of cultivating is those which arose from the power of friends. That means it is by meeting Kalyan Mitra, as we say in Hindi, Geveshini, or spiritual friends, your teacher, spiritual guidance. Because of that, because of their guidance, because of their instigation, because of they are asking you to do such a practice. So through that power, you are able to cultivate bodhicitta. Then the second is power of, you can also cultivate bodhicitta by means of power of cause. Power of cause means if you are somebody who has already that Mahayana lineage, then that is the power of the cause through which you will be able to cultivate bodhicitta. And then power of root. Power of root means if you are somebody who has accumulated the root or foundation, of the virtue of the Mahayana practice, okay, and then because of this, your lineage of bodhisattva will prosper, and so that's the meaning of cultivation of bodhicitta through the power of root. Then power of listening and habituation in the virtue. For some people, just through the power of listening to a particular teaching, especially of Mahayana teaching, there will be a kind of sudden awakening. And there are stories of, many people being able to cultivate bodhicitta just by hearing about some of the features and qualities of bodhicitta. Okay. And then in this life also, for example, by listening to the Mahayana teaching, you are able to cultivate faith, then you are able to cultivate bodhicitta. And then when you make your mind repeatedly habituated with such a practice, then again you are able to cultivate it. So that is called habituation, power of listening and habituation in the virtue. Now out of this four process of cultivation of bodhicitta, it could be a cultivation of bodhicitta through the presence of all the four powers, forces. Or it may be a cultivation of bodhicitta due to the presence of one cause, one factor, okay, one power. Okay. Now, if the cultivation is through just one factor, one power, then that is unstable. Unstable and stable arises. That's the meaning. If the cultivation is due to presence of one power, then that will be not very stable. It's unstable. And if it is the cultivation of bodhicitta is due to the presence of all the four powers, then that is the stable bodhicitta. That's the meaning. Unstable and stable arises. So anyway, these are all called as bodhicittas guided and shown by others. Okay. because at the end of the day, it is due to the physical and verbal gestures and teachings that such a cultivation of bodhicitta takes place. So that's why this is called bodhicittas shown by others. Okay. Next, verse number 7. The ultimate is so accepted as it arose from having thoroughly venerated the completely enlightened Buddhas, having well accumulated merit and primordial wisdom, and having cultivated non-conceptual primordial wisdom to phenomena. Now this verse is talking about how one can even also cultivate bodhicitta in a natural way or by natural state. Okay. Now in this case, the ultimate is so accepted as it arose from having thoroughly venerated the completely enlightened Buddhas. That means if you're somebody who has thoroughly served and venerated the emanation body of the Buddha, emanation body of a completely enlightened Buddha, and then having respected and served that completely enlightened Buddha, if you hear teachings from him, okay, having well accumulated merit, and especially in terms of your practice, if you accumulate merit for one countless eon, and also wisdom for one countless eon, then in terms of your realization, you will be able to cultivate that non-conceptual primordial wisdom, a non-conceptual primordial wisdom, both in terms of the object and the subject. So you will be able to cultivate such a bodhicitta, and that is called the ultimate bodhicitta. So naturally, arisen bodhicitta, having well accumulated merit and primordial wisdom, and having cultivated non-conceptual primordial wisdom to phenomena. Okay. Okay, we stop here then.
Okay, so now we can take some questions, right?
Yeah.
Geshe-la, I ask all our listeners to send your questions. I have some questions that were sent to us earlier, and I would like to start with them. Let me just send. The first question actually is about a quotation. I just sent them the Russian translation so that he could translate it more easier. So, today we came across a quotation from Dilgokyen Rinpoche from the book Enlightened Courage. And the quotation is the following. If we see others in trouble, although we cannot immediately take their sufferings upon ourselves, we should make the wish to be able to relieve them from their misfortunes. Prayers like this will bear fruit eventually. Again, if others have very strong afflictive emotions, we should think, may all their emotions be concentrated in me. With fervent conviction, we should persist in thinking like this until we have some sign or feeling that we have been able to take upon ourselves the suffering and emotions of others. This might take the form of an increase in our own emotions or of the actual experience of the suffering and pain of others. This is how to bring hardships on the path. And so the question is, sometimes when I watch a video which shows the pain or suffering of others, say, especially when it's about punishing the children, and etc., I just close this video. I don't watch it anymore because my heart just can't stay it. Do I need to do something about when I watch this video according to this advice given by Dilgokyen Tse?
Yeah. So
the question, as I understand it, is instead of maybe stopping watching the video, should I just do something about it, as Dilgo Khyentse advises?
yeah, if there is no suffering, there is no renunciation. There is a teaching which says if there is no suffering, there is no renunciation. Therefore, O mind, you should think carefully. There's the quotation. Okay, O mind, you should think carefully. So I have also mentioned that suffering is the introduction to happiness. Suffering not necessarily be negative all the time. Okay, it's how you understand it. So whether it's your suffering or suffering of other people, suffering is suffering. It must be eliminated, right? But in the practical level, we may not have that capacity to remove that, as Dilguchen Rinpoche mentioned. But at least emotionally, you show your solidarity, right? Even that may not be of any direct help to that other person, especially if you are like imagining taking the sufferings of others who are like millions of miles away, right? So at the ordinary level, we may not be able to take it, but you are actually practicing your mental courage to gradually be able to help others when the time comes. So therefore, whether it's through your personal experience or by watching a video, if you see some suffering and then you really feel unhappy about it, that means you are a good person. Okay, that means you don't want other people to suffer. But you cannot stop it right away. So therefore, the thing is that number one is to charge yourself and pray that nobody suffers. Then not only praying all the time and doing nothing, whenever there is an opportunity to lessen the suffering of other people, in some cases it is very easy. I think I mentioned it earlier also. For example, if there is a child who is hungry, and it is not so difficult for you to give lunch or dinner or few coins, things like that. So start practicing in that level. With that practice, then you will not start feeling that I'm helpless, I'm overwhelmed by all these sufferings. Then you will start gaining some confidence that yes, I can do that. Some other people can also do that. If we all do this together, there will be a major change in the world of minimizing the suffering of other people, right? So there should be a long-term strategy and also immediate implementation of whatever is feasible for you. So that's important. It's not just praying. That's number one. Number two, in the Tonglen practice, the practice of giving and receiving, there when we imagine taking the sufferings of other people upon oneself, it's not like imagining that you take all the sufferings of others upon yourself and you are completely overwhelmed because you already have your personal sufferings. And in addition to that, you bring all those sufferings. Then if you don't know how to do it, then you might feel overwhelmed and totally helpless. So therefore, because of this fact, normally in the Tonglen practice, what is being encouraged is that you have this very strong self-cherishing attitude, okay, which must be removed, which is your enemy. So when you imagine receiving other people's suffering upon yourself, you don't put it just upon yourself, you put it on this self-cherishing attitude. And with that, you should think that that self-cherishing attitude is completely overwhelmed and destroyed. And now you're completely clean without self-cherishing attitude. So if you do that, then you don't get that sense of, being overwhelmed and helpless. Okay. So these are some tactics. Okay.
Yes, Geshe-la, I just would like to clarify maybe for myself. Am I understanding it right that whenever I see the sufferings of others, I need not be overwhelmed by this emotion, right?
Exactly.
I just,
Exactly.
yeah, I just need to be calm and
Come and
compassionate.
here you need to recall the thing that we have repeatedly stated. There are things you can do, there are things you can't do. So there's no point just emotionally feeling upset. That is not the solution. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Geshe-la. The next question, just a moment. So the next question is from Veronica. And this is the question about sutras. And Veronica says that occasionally, or I'm reading sutras, and I noticed that they can be categorized into two categories according to their content. The first category are the sutras where there is some action, like Vimalakirti Sutra and others, right? And there are the second type of sutras which are not which I don't understand very well. For instance, the Sutra of Golden Light. In this sutra, nothing happens. The only thing which happens in this sutra seems to be just enumerating the, like the good qualities of this sutra, and what benefits will it bring to others who read it, who disseminates it, and so on. So the question is, how shall I understand this? Where is the sutra, the actual sutra, which we need to read, to praise, and to memorize? Because I don't see like the sutra, like the sutra itself. There is only the enumeration of its good qualities. And what is the sutra? Is it hidden from us, or is this enumeration the sutra itself?
This is itself a sutra, because there are many levels and approaches to help people. One is, just as we already discussed, about the importance of cultivation of faith, respect to Bodhichitta. Similarly, you need to develop respect and faith to the Golden Light Sutra or the Buddha. Faith is precursor to all kind of wisdom and knowledge. It is faith which removes the mental turpidity, mental impurities. Just like somebody falling in love with somebody, falling in love with somebody. When you fall in love with your teacher or student or whatever, your mind already becomes very clear. I mean, there is not loving kindness or compassion, but even with that kind of facsimile kind of love, your mind becomes pure, more pure. So similarly, when you cultivate faith, your mind becomes clear and you become receptive. Okay, so there may be certain sutras, for example, which you are unable to understand right now, but because of the fact that you have fairly good understanding of who the Buddha is, okay, that he is a reliable teacher, even if you don't know he is completely enlightened, but he is a reliable teacher. Thereby you can say this Golden Light Sutra is also taught by the Buddha, so therefore it must be correct. So for the time being, even if you're unable to understand the meaning, you develop faith. Okay, then gradually if you read the whole text, I'm definite there are many verses there which talks about the real subject matter of that sutra also, I'm sure. But I don't know whether you have read the whole Golden Light Sutra or not, but it definitely will be there. Okay.
Thank you very much, Geshe-la. And the next question also came to us from our readers. In a situation of confusion, restrictions, and violence, what choice would you personally make? Actively fight injustice, under the threat of being imprisoned or killed, or dedicate yourself to spiritual practice and dedicate merits to those who suffer, provided you do have such a choice. Let's say Tibetans, how many, 60 plus years ago, right? They fled,
Yeah.
some of them fled Tibet and others stood. And what is the correct way? What would be your choice today from the your current situation? Stay and do something there, or just seek more favorable situation for practice, maybe?
No, there's not one kind of answer to this. The Buddha's teaching itself talks about being able to adapt to changing situations. Take the best out of the given situation. Do the best out of the given situation. I have earlier mentioned about an ordinary story of a person who was very brave and never hesitates in fighting, very brave person, but sometimes without any reason, when there is no sight of his enemy, he would just ride his horse and take his gun and run away. And then later, when people asked him, when you have no enemy, nobody nearby, why you are running away? He said, sometimes you are hero when you fight. On other occasions, you are hero when you run away. So that's what I'm saying. So the cause for which you are, fighting may be truthful, honest, and just, but you have to also understand the situation. If you are in a situation where the other person does not listen, all that person does is atrocity and things like that, then on such a situation, it is better to save your life, to not to necessarily kind of give it up, but take some other measures. There is always different measures, different ways to do that. And then, of course, prayer and other things. It is important to to maintain that stamina or inspiration. It's important, but you need to be skillful, as we say in Buddhism, in different situations. Okay. Like for example, if I elaborate this a little bit better, now I am a refugee. I've been living here now, as you rightly mentioned, over 60 years or so. There are two ways I can do it. I mentioned this to one Indian gentleman who came to see me this morning. I mentioned the same thing to him. There are two ways you can look at it. One, you should feel miserable, thinking that I'm a refugee, I'm still living in a foreign land. And then, of course, you have many problems. You just count all your miseries, difficulties, and feel dejected and hopeless, and start cursing the enemy, okay, and lose your faith in the efficacy of the spiritual practice. There's one way of doing it. The other way of doing it is, in one way, we are all dependent. We are not independent in the true sense of the term. Even if you get independent in the sense of being able to go to your own country, which we normally call independent country, but you are enslaved by negative emotions, you are enslaved by ignorance, so you are actually not independent. Nobody is independent. We are enslaved by negative emotions, right? So therefore, the only way you can really get real freedom and real independence is not from the control of a human enemy, but to free oneself from the control of negative emotions, including ignorance. Once you are able to do that, then even in the most difficult situation, you will not have no regret, and you will have also no fear. There are so many accounts of Tibetans who have been imprisoned, and some of them came out by saying, I had the best practice when I was in prison for 14, 15 years. And there is a story of somebody who, when they were about to be shot, and then the torturer, when they asked that person, okay, now you say the last thing that you want to say, then he would still pray. May I be able to take the sufferings of all sentient beings upon myself, and may I be able to offer all the good things that I've done for the well-being of all other sentient beings. And having did this prayer, then they would say, okay, now I'm ready, please shoot, with a smile on the face, you see. So those people who really understand what a life is, and who also really understand the efficacy of the good deeds and bad deeds, you know, you have not much concern about whether you are killed or you die a natural death or whatever, you see, because they understand the bigger picture. I think that is very, very important. And we all have fear and suffering because we don't understand the bigger picture. We only understand the human way of, fighting and living and imprisoning and things like that. Okay, we get stuck with it. So, from spiritual point of view, you need to come out of all this, which is not easy, of course. Okay.
Oh, Geshe-la, yeah, I just would like to maybe clarify for myself, because I know that today in the current situation, many are considering, to stay or to go, not only in Russia, in different countries. Like when you think that what would be best solution, just to stay and face all the hardships and maybe try to do something, or just go and try to do something from outside to benefit, like to maybe have more opportunities for spiritual practice and so on. So what would be your advice for such people who are hesitating in making this choice?
I'm not, it may not be right for us to speak for them because I don't understand their situation properly. But to make a general statement, the grass is always greener on the other side. Okay. There is no place on the earth where there is no problem. Okay. So therefore, you need to think carefully. Yes, I understand you have a lot of problems, difficulties, but you're going to some other country. Will that really, are you sure that that will solve your problem or other problems that you are planning to solve? So you need to think carefully. That's all I can say.
Thank you very much, Geshe-la. Maybe we could take just one more question. The question is about mantras. Tibetans, we can see that Tibetans, they are reciting mantras all the time, right? So what is the effect of mantras on the practitioners? And do you think, is there any difference between those who practice reciting mantras and who don't practice reciting mantras?
Reciting mantra is not a must, but just like, this question is really like, is there any difference between people who do prayers and who don't do prayers? Okay. But then on a larger scale, there is nobody who doesn't do any prayer. Okay. When I say this, I'm not talking about a Buddhist prayer, but prayer means people who aspire to achieve something. So there is nobody who doesn't aspire to achieve something, especially to achieve something good. That's what we all do. So prayer or mantra basically is expressing your wish, saying that I want to become this. For example, if you say Om Muni Muni Maha Muni Soa, then this is a mantra. And what the important thing is for you is to understand the meaning of that mantra. So you're basically saying, may I also become like the Maha Muni, the Buddha Shakya Muni. May my ordinary body, speech, and mind become the exalted body, speech, and mind of the Shakya Muni. So once you do that, you are really aspiring to achieve some, lofty, higher state of purity, enlightenment. That very aspiration, as we already discussed about the aspiration of Bodhichitta, that very aspiration will make you, gradually achieve such a state, move towards such a state. That's one thing. The second is when you recite mantra, that will help you also concentration. Okay, because when you chant mantra, then you are using your energy, wind energy. Okay, and especially when you chant these positive mantras, then it tranquilizes your energy. it makes your energy peaceful. This is totally different from, shouting at the top of voice in a conflict zone, war zone, where your shouting itself will disturb your whole being. This is not like when you chant mantra, the very motivation is to pacify yourself, to calm yourself. Then accordingly, you make your mind focus on that chanting, focusing on that mantra. So that is concentration and also making your mind peaceful. And then, of course, if you know the meaning of each mantra, then of course it's like a deeper meditation, not only one-pointed meditation, but also analytical meditation to develop, bodhicitta, to develop shunya, wisdom, understanding, emptiness, and so forth.
Thank you very much, Geshe-la. We have two more questions. Do you still have time for them, or do you want them?
Sure,
okay.
Sure.
The first one is from Sneha Gupta. Please unmute yourself.
Thank you. Pranam Geshe-la.
Pranam.
I wanted to ask you, you had mentioned about relative bodhicitta and ultimate bodhicitta, and you had said that ultimate bodhicitta actually refers to insight into emptiness.
Yeah.
And I was wondering why then is ultimate bodhicitta, why does it have the word bodhicitta in it?
Because just like we have conventional bodhicitta, which is the bodhicitta. Okay. The conventional bodhicitta is called bodhicitta, which means mind to enlightenment, because this mind leads to achieving Buddhahood. So similarly, the wisdom, understanding, emptiness, of course, leads to achieving Buddhahood also. Okay, so therefore this is called.
I see. Okay.
Yeah. Because the wisdom, realizing emptiness, and bodhicitta, these are like the two wings of the bird. Just like with the two wings, the bird soars into the space. So similarly, with these two wings of bodhicitta and wisdom, realizing emptiness, you achieve complete enlightenment.
Thank you, Geshe-la. I was confused. I thought, why is compassion also, okay, thank you for clarifying.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Geshe-la. And the last question from today from Roman. He asks, how do the Buddhas in their pure vision perceive war and violent death?
They will perceive it as the result of negative emotions. Okay. But even the Buddhas are, I think, helpless. That's why we say the Buddha's power and the power of sentient beings are equal. Okay. So ordinary worldly negative emotions and our deeds, they are very powerful. Not powerful in the sense of solving some problem, but simply powerful, mainly in negative deeds or in destruction or things like that. It's very powerful. So Buddha cannot change it. So that is the reason we don't believe in a creator God in Buddhism. Therefore, we don't expect Buddha to solve all the problems. We of course pray with the wish that something good comes, because he's somebody omniscient who has that capacity to guide us in that sense. Not because he has the capacity to move his magic wand and solve all the problems. Okay.
Thank you very much, Geshe-la. Maybe we can conclude the session now with the prayers and dedication.
Changju semjo rimbo je maje pa no jeva da jeva nyamba meba ye kongna kongdo peba sho. May the precious bodhicitta which we have not cultivated be cultivated, and may the precious bodhicitta that we cultivated flourish further. Thank you. Be well and be happy.